color lookup tables. Export color lookup tables. By the way, you can now export color lookup tables from Photoshop in multiple formats, and the exported files can then be applied in Photoshop and After Effects and other image and video editing applications. And you can also export color lookup tables only from documents that have a background layer and additional layers to modify colors. And how to export lookup tables. How to export lookup tables. By the way, we have many steps here now. Step number 1, you should to open an image having a background layer. Step number 2, you should to add adjustment layers to give the image the desired look or effect. Step number 3, you should to select fill, then export the color lookup tables. Step number 4, in the export color lookup tables dialog, enter a description. And step number 5, optionally, you should to enter a copyright string. Photoshop automatically prefixes and copyright current year to the text you entered. Step number 6, you should to enter a value in the grade points field from 0 to 256, and a higher value for this field creates bigger files having higher quality, by the way. And alternatively select a fuzzy quality setting, and poor and low and medium and high or maximum from the pop-up menu. And step number 7, you should to select one or more of the available formats in which you want to export the color lookup table, like 3DL or Cube or CSP and ICC profile, and then click OK. And number 2, select the location on your computer where you want to save the generated files, and also enter a base file name to which Photoshop automatically appends to the file extensions. Considerations for exporting to different formats. By the way, if you start with a document in the lab color mode, you can export the color lookup table as an ICC abstract profile. And abstract profiles are the most flexible of the formats, and you can apply them to any color mode. And when you export the table in RGB only format, Photoshop actually automatically converts the document to the RGB color mode. And if you start with a document in the CMYK color profile, you can also export the color lookup table is an ICC and SMYK device link profile. And when you export the table in RGB only format, Photoshop, by the way, automatically converts the document to the RGB color mode. And if you start with a document in the RGB color mode, you can also export the color lookup table only in 3D LUT, 3 dot, and 3DL, Cube, and CSP, and RGB device link formats. And adjust image sharpness and blur. Photoshop offers a variety of tools and filters and masks that give you fine control over image sharpness or blur, and sharpening in Photoshop, and selective focus in Photoshop. What about sharpening recommendations? By the way, sharpening enhances the definition of edges in an image, and whether your images come from a digital camera or a scanner. Most images, by the way, can benefit from sharpening, and the degree of sharpening needed varies depending on the quality of the digital camera or scanner. And keep in mind that sharpening cannot correct a severely blurred image, by the way, and types for better sharpening. What about types for better sharpening? By the way, sharpen your image on a separate layer so that you can sharpen it later to output to a different medium. And if you sharpen your image on a separate layer, set the layer's blending mode to luminosity to avoid color shifts along edges, and sharpening increases image contrast. And if you find that highlights or shadows are clipped after you sharpen, you can use the layer blending controls, and if you sharpen a separate layer to prevent sharpening in highlights and shadows, you should specify a tonal range for blending layers. And reduce image noise before sharpening so that you don't intensify the noise. And sharpen your image multiple times in a small amount, and sharpen the first time to correct blur caused by capturing your image and scanning it or taking it with your digital camera. And after you have color corrected and decided your image, sharpen it again or copy of it, and to add the appropriate amount of sharpening for your output medium. And if possible, judge your sharpening by outputting it to the final medium, and the amount of sharpening needed various amount of output media, by the way, and how to use the unsharp mask USM filter or the smart sharpen filter for better control when sharpening your images. Also, Photoshop, by the way, also has the sharpen and sharpen edges and sharpen more filter options. These filters, by the way, are automatic and don't provide controls and options. And you can also sharpen your entire image or just a portion using a selection or mask, because the unsharp mask and smart sharpen filters can be applied, by the way, to only one layer at a time, and you might need to merge layers or flatten your file to sharpen all image layers in a multi-layered file. Note and be careful. The name unsharp mask comes from a darkroom technique used in traditional film-based photography, and the filter sharpens images rather than the opposite. Sharpen using smart sharpen. How to sharpen using smart sharpen? By the way, the smart sharpen filter has sharpening controls not available with the unsharp mask filter, and you can set the sharpening algorithm or control the amount of sharpening that occurs in shadow and highlights areas, like screenshot now. Screenshot now appear for you now. Smart sharpen, and you have to choose now anything from this function. And Photoshop smart sharpen dialog box, and we have option now. Number 1. Zoom the document window to 100% to get an accurate view of the sharpening. Step number 2, you should choose filter, then you choose sharpen, then you choose smart sharpen. Step number 3, you should set the controls in the sharpen tabs, and we have option here now. Option number 1, amount. Amount is meaning that sets the amount of sharpening, and a higher value increases the contrast between edge pixels and giving the appearance of greater sharpness. And you have radius. Radius is meaning that determines the number of pixels surrounding the edge pixels affected by the sharpening. And the greater the radius value, the wider the edge effects and the more obvious the sharpening. And what about reduce noise? Reduce noise is meaning that Photoshop only reduce unwanted noise while keeping important edges unaffected. And what about remove? Remove is meaning that you should set the sharpening algorithm used to sharpen the image. Gaussian blur is meaning that is the method used by the unsharp mask filter, and lens blur is meaning that detects the edges and detail in an image and provides final sharpening of detail and reduce the sharpening halos. And motion blur is meaning that attempts to reduce the effects of blur due to camera or subject movement, and you should set the angle control if you choose motion blur. And what about angle? Angle is meaning that sets the direction of motion for the motion blur option of the removal control. And more accurate is meaning that CS6 only processes the file slowly for a more accurate removal of blurring. And step number 4, adjust the sharpening of dark and light areas using in the shadow and highlight tabs. You should click and the advanced button to display the tabs, and if the dark or light sharpening halos appear too strong, you can also reduce them with these controls, and which are only available for 8 bytes and 16 bytes per channel images. What about fade amount? Fade amount is meaning that adjusts the amount of sharpening in the highlights or shadows. So what about tonal whites? Tonal whites is meaning that controls the range of tones in the shadows or highlights that are modified, by the way, and you can move the slider to the left or right to decrease or increase the tonal whites value, and the smaller values restrict the adjustments to only the darker regions for shadow correction and only the lighter regions for highlight correction. What about radius? Radius is meaning that controls the size of the area around each pixel that is used to determine whether a pixel is in the shadows or highlights, and moving the slider to the left specifies a smaller area and moving it to the right specifies a larger area. Then click OK. So what about sharpen using unsharp mask? Sharpen using unsharp mask. The unsharp mask, by the way, sharpness an image by increasing contrast along the edges in an image, and the unsharp mask doesn't detect edges in an image, by the way. Instead, it locates pixels that differ in value from surrounding pixels by the threshold you specify, and it then increases the contrast of neighboring pixels by the amount you specify. And so for neighboring pixels, the lighter pixels, by the way, get lighter, and the darker pixels get darker. In addition, you specify the radius of the region to which each pixel is compared, and the greater the radius, the larger the edge effects. Like this screenshot now, we have in the right side, in the left side, original image, and in the right side, unsharp mask applied. In the left side, original image, and in the right side, unsharp mask applied. And the degree of sharpening applied to an image is often a matter of personal choice, by the way. And keep in mind that over sharpening an image produces a halo effect around the edges. This screenshot now is a preview now. Explain over sharpening an image produces a halo effect around the edges, and the effect of the unsharp mask filter are more pronounced on screen than in high resolution output. And if your final destination in the prompt experiment to determine what setting work best for your image, and you have two steps here now. Step number 1, optional. If your image is multi-layered, so you should select the layer containing the image you want to sharpen, and you can also apply unsharp mask to only one layer at a time. And even if layers are linked or grouped, you can also merge the layers before applying the unsharp mask filter. Step number 2, you should choose filter, then choose sharpen, then choose unsharp mask, then make sure the preview option is selected, and then click the image in the preview window and hold down the mouse to see how the image looks without the sharpening. Drag in the preview window to see different parts of the image, and then click OK, and then click plus or minus to zoom in or zoom out. And also 3 is a preview window in the unsharp mask dialog box is placed to move the dialog box so you can preview the effects of the filter in the document window. Step number 3, you should drag the radius slider or enter a value to determine the number of pixels surrounding the edge pixels that affect the sharpening. And the greater the radius value, the wider the edge effects, and the wider the edge effects, the more obvious the sharpening, by the way. And the radius values varies according to the subject matter and the size of the final reproduction and the output method for high resolution images. And the radius value between 1 and 2 is usually recommended, and a lower value it sharpens only the edge pixels, and with a higher value it sharpens a wider band of pixels. And this effect, by the way, is much less noticeable in print than on screen, and because a 2 pixel radius represents a smaller area in a high resolution printed image. Step number 4, drag the amount slider or enter a value to determine how much to increase the contrast of pixels. For high resolution printed images, and an amount between 150% and 200% is usually recommended. And step number 5, you should drag the threshold slider or enter a value to determine how different the sharpened pixels must be from the surrounding area before they are considered edge pixels and sharpened by the filter. And for instance, as a threshold of 4 effects, all pixels, by the way, that have tonal values that differ by a value of 4 or more on a scale of 0 to 255, and so if adjacent pixels have tonal values of 128 and 129, they are not affected, by the way. And to avoid introducing noise or posterization in images with flash tones, for example, you can't use an edge mask or try experimenting with threshold values between 2 and 20, and the default threshold value 0 sharpens all pixels in the image. And if applying unsharp mask makes already bright color appears, overlay stutter, choose edit, then choose fade unsharp mask, and choose luminosity from the mode menu. So what about sharpen selectively? Sharpen selectively. You can sharpen parts of your image, by the way, by using a mask or a selection to prevent sharpening in certain parts of your image. For example, you can use an edge mask with the unsharp mask filter on a portrait to sharpen the eyes and mouth and nose and the outline of the head, but not the texture of the skin. Like this screenshot now, we have in the left side now using an edge mask to apply the unsharp mask only to specific features in an image. And what about sharpen a selection? Sharpen a selection, we have two steps now. Step number 1, with the image layer selected in the layers panel and draw a selection. Number 2, you should to choose filter, then choose sharpen, then you choose unsharp mask and adjust the options and then click OK. And only the selection is unsharpened, sharpened, and leaving the rest of the image untouched. Sharpen an image using an edge mask. Sharpen an image using an edge mask. Step number 1, you should to create a mask only to apply sharpening selectively, and there are many ways to create an edge mask, by the way, and you can use your favorite method or try this one. You should to open the channels panel and then select the channel that displays the grayscale image with the greatest contrast in the document window, and after that open this is the green or the red channel, like this screenshot now, selecting the channel with the greatest contrast, and after that duplicate the selected channel, and after that with the duplicated channel selected, choose filter, then choose styles, then choose find edges, and after that choose image, and after that choose adjustments and choose invert to invert the image. And the screenshot now, find edges, filter applied and image inverted. And with the inverted image, by the way, still selected, choose filter, then choose other, then choose maximum, and set the radius to a low number, and then click OK to scan the edges and randomize the pixels. And actually after that choose filter, then choose noise, then choose medium, and set the radius to a low number, and then click OK. This average, by the way, is the neighboring pixels, and after that choose image and choose adjustment, and then choose levels and set the black point high to get rid of random pixels, and if necessary you can also print with black to retouch the final edge mask. The screenshot now is explained for you, setting the black point high in levels to eliminate random pixels in the edge mask. And you should choose filter, then you choose blur, then you choose Gaussian blur to feather the edges. Note and be careful, the maximum, the median, and the Gaussian blur filters soften the edge mask so that the sharpening effect is blends better in the final image. And also all three filters are used, by the way, in this procedure, and you can also experiment using only one or two. And step number 2, in the channels panel, Control click if you use Windows or Command click if you use macOS, and the duplicate channel to make the edge mask a selection. Step number 3, in the layers panel, select the image layer, then make sure that the selection is still visible on the image. And step number 4, you should choose select and choose inverse. Step number 5, with the selection active on the image layer, choose filter, then choose sharpen, then choose unsharp mask, then set the desired options and then click OK. And to view your results, you should select the RGB channel in the channels panel and then deselect the selection in the image. And you can also create an action to conveniently apply all the steps in the procedure. How to add lens blur? Add lens blur, by the way, to an image to give the effect of a narrower depth of field, so that some objects in the image stay in focus and other areas are blurred. And you can also use a sample selection to determine which areas are blurred, and or you can provide a separate alpha, a channel depth map to describe exactly how you want the blur added. And the lens blur filter uses the depth map to determine the position of pixels in an image. And with a depth map selected, you can also use the course here cursor to set the starting point of a given blur, and you can also use alpha channels and layer masks to create new maps. And black areas in an alpha channel are treated as though they are at the front of the photo, and white areas are treated as if they are far in the distance. For a gradual blurring effect, none at the bottom or to maximum to a top. And create a new alpha channel and apply a gradient so that the channel is white at the top of the image and black at the bottom. And then select the lens blur filter and choose the alpha channel from the source pop-up menu. And to change the direction of the gradient, select the invert checkbox. And the way the blur appears depends on the area's shape you choose, and the number of plates determines the area's shape, and you can also change plates and of areas by curving them and making them more circular and or rotating them. And you can also reduce or magnify the preview by clicking the minus button or the plus button. We have steps. Step number 1, you should choose filter, then you choose blur, then you choose lens blur. Step number 2, for preview, choose faster to generate quicker previews and choose more accurate to view the final version of the image, and more accurate previews take longer to generate. Step number 3, for deep map, you should choose a source, and if you have one from the source pop-up menu, you should drag the blur focal distance slider to set the deeps at which pixels are in focus. For example, if you set focal distance to 100 pixels at 255 are completely blurred, and pixels closer to 100 are blurred less. And if you click in the preview image, the blur focal distance by the way slider changes to reflect the clicked location and brings the deeps of the clicked location into focus. Step number 4, to invert the selection or alpha channel you are using as the deep map source, select invert. Step number 5, choose an areas from the shape pop-up menu, and if you wish, drag the blade curvature slider to smooth the edges of areas, and or drag the rotation slider to rotate it, and to add more blur, drag the radius slider. Step number 6, for specular highlights, drag the threshold slider to select a brightness cutoff, and all pixels, by the way, brighter than the cutoff value are treated as specular highlights. And to increase the brightness of the highlights, drag the brightness slider. Step number 7, to add noise to an image, choose uniform or Gaussian to add noise without affecting color, and choose monochromatic. Drag the amount slider to increase or decrease noise. And blurring removes film grain and noise from the original image, and to make the image look realistic and unretouched, you can return some of the removed noise to the image. Then click OK to apply the changes to your image. So what about blur image areas? Blur image areas. The blur tool softens hard edges, by the way, or reduces detail in an image, and the more you paint over an area with the tool, the blurrer it becomes, by the way. And we have steps. Step number 1, you should select the blur tool, and step number 2, do one of the following option. Choose the brush type and set options for the blending mode and distance in the options bar. And number 2, select sample all layers in the option bar to blur using data from all visible layers, and deselect this option, and the tool uses data from only the active layer, by the way. Step number 3, you should drag over the part of the image you want to blur. And what about sharpen image areas? Sharpen image areas, the sharpen tool increases contrast along edges to increase apparent sharpness, and the more you paint over an area with the tool, the more sharpening increases, by the way. And you have steps here now again. Step number 1, you should select the sharpen tool, this icon, and if the tool isn't visible, hold down the blur tool. And number 2, do one of the following. You should choose a brush type and set options for the blending mode and stress, and then select sample all layers to sharpen using data from all visible layers. And if this deselected the tool actually uses data from only the active layer, and after that select protect detail to enhance. Select protect detail to enhance details and minimize pixelated artifacts, and deselect this option if you want to produce more exaggerated sharpening effects. And number 3, you should drag over the part of the image you want to sharpen. Thank you so much.